BookTube, it's Missy, and today I'm here to share with you guys my March wrap-up. I have exactly 20 minutes on my memory card left, which will give me, hopefully this will be very, very quick. I'm not going to do this in any particular order. I'm just going to pick up the books and talk about them. All of my Goodreads reviews, my written reviews will be down below if in case you guys want to read up more. I go into a lot of detail and research when I post my reviews on most of the books that I write about or review about. And then, yeah, it's just, I'm able to function better in the writing instead of on camera. So the first book that I want to talk about, and I did want to make this a video on its own, but I don't have time for that. So this is The Poet. I did receive this from Entangled Teen last month. It came out on the 9th. This is a thriller, crime, police procedural story by Lisa Renee Jones. This is the first book in a series. I don't know how long the series is going to be. I do like Samantha Jazz. I don't know why I said Jessica. I did like Samantha Jazz as a character, and I am definitely interested in reading more stories with her in it. So, The Poet is about a serial killer. At first in the investigation, he's called the Professor, but once Samantha James, the detective, once she gets the case, she then calls him the Poet. And the reason why that is because his MO is to leave poetry in the mouth of his victims. Now, Samantha Jazz is a expert at poetry. She grew up with poetry. Her grandpa loved poetry, and so she grew up with the classics for poetry. She did a poetry club in college, and so she just knows a lot about poetry. Now, our serial killer, is obsessed with her, and he calls himself, like, not the judge, but he's like trying to he's the master. He's trying to get her as his protege or his apprentice. He wants her to rid the world of bad people as well. Those that aren't worthy because they don't like poetry. Now, granted, that's such a stupid thing. Like, if you like poetry, great. If you don't like poetry, great. So having this man be obsessed with poetry and kill people who say bad things about poetry. Could you imagine if society was like that, or if there was more people like that that just killed people that didn't, I guess that's true. People who don't have the same values, ideas, and dreams and hopes kill people that don't have the same mindset. That happens all the time. I digress. Anyways, I loved this book. The thing with this author is every single chapter, and these chapters are pretty short. I mean, there is 108 chapters in this book. So the chapters are very short. They're bite-sized. They're easy to digest and get through. And every single chapter, like the very last sentence, is a cliffhanger, which makes you want to read the next chapter. And so I read this entire book in 2 sittings. I read half of it in 1 sitting, and then I spent like 15 days where I didn't pick it up. And then I read the second half on my vacation when I went to go camping. I took it with me and I read the second half. And it was so addicting. Like, the pacing is so good. The thrill is good. The twists are good. The killer, interesting. You have a few chapters with his POV, so you get to like know exactly what he's doing, but you never figure out his identity. And once it becomes clear of like kind of who this person might be, you don't know for sure until Samantha James finds, I keep saying James, Samantha Jazz. Once she finds out, then you're like, what? It was a thrill ride. I absolutely loved this book. 5 stars. 5 stars. If you like thrillers, pick this one up. I recommend. This book here, His Hideous Heart, edited by Dahlia Adler. This was the buddy read with Ashley, and this is what took me all month to read. This didn't put me in a reading slump per se. I was just pretty busy in the month of March. I mean, I had my birthday. We were, getting ready for going on vacation. I was, working, school and kids, and they went back to school for the first time in an entire year in March. So there was a lot of things going on. And this book is so long. Now, there are 13 stories in here. I've read comments from people that praise this book. I've read comments that people have despised this book. The people who despise this book hate the fact that the original Poe stories are in here. They say that it fattens the book up to a ridiculous size. I say, thank the Lord, the Poe stories are in here to read. I don't understand the politics of making a book, why people complain about things. Some things to me just don't seem as big of a problem. Like this is a mole-sized hill compared to a mountain. I liked the fact that the original stories were in here because I didn't want to have to bust out my Barnes & Noble leather-clad, leather-bound, Poe collection. I have 2 Poe full collections. One's very, very, very old, like written in the 20s or something. Or printed in the 20s. And then I have my Barnes & Noble edition. But they're both very thick. And I didn't want to, go through the Bible thin pages looking for the stories when I could easily read them here. So what I did was I read the original and then I read the retelling. And then I read the original and I read the retelling. It was funny because I started in the back with the original and then I'd go to the front. And so it was almost like I read this book from the outside in. And these are all of the authors that have stories within this book. I gave this 4.5 stars, maybe 5 stars. I can't remember now. I absolutely loved this whole book. I am obsessed with Edgar Allan Poe. He's my favorite dead author. And his stories are just amazing. Like even the ones that are long-winded at the beginning end up being amazing at the end. In my Goodreads review, I give a star rating for the original and for the retelling. I found the retellings all pretty much spot on. They either gender swapped the characters, put in diversity with transgender characters, gay characters, black characters. This is fully diverse, and the authors are fully diverse, which is just great. It's not just your run-of-the-mill collection of short stories. There's so much diversity in this book that is very appealing and also right on with, where our culture is going now. Like, we're supposed to be open-minded. We're supposed to love one another in everything that we do. It should be diverse because that's how life is outside of our homes. It's diverse. And so I really, really enjoyed all of these stories. I only have 11 minutes now, so I'm not going to talk about the stories themselves. I'm just going to talk about my favorite. So my favorite story in here was Tiffany Jackson's story, and she did a retelling of The Cask of Amontillado. I can finally say that title now. And her story is Carnival. Chef's Kiss. Mwah. Amazing, amazing. I loved that one. The Telltale Heart by Stephanie Coogan was also very good. And the one I hated the most was The Raven by Amanda Lovelace. I don't know Amanda Lovelace. I looked up her books on Goodreads. She writes primarily poems, and to dissect and redact Edgar Allan Poe's most famous poem the way she did is sacrilege. I hated it so freaking much, and I never half cuss on this channel. Look what she did. Look what she did. It's a half-assed way to write a poem. If she was going to write a poem or a retelling, that's what she should have done. How dare she take apart one of the best poems ever and redact? She didn't do anything. There's no imagination in this. There's no trying in this. This was the most lazy. I will never pick anything up by her because of what she did in this book. How trashy. I'm just going to read you the first line. Once I forgot her, each ghost I wished, nameless forevermore. She took the body of that poem, stripped off the flesh, the blood, the veins, everything, and left the skeleton of the story about the Raven. Now, we all know, if you are a lover of Edgar Allan Poe, if you've heard the Raven story before, our character is in a home by himself, and he's thinking about Lenore, a lost love of his. Okay? I think she's dead. And he's wanting to think about her, and a raven comes, and the narrator's like, will she ever be? And then the raven's like, no. And he's like, will I ever see her again? And the raven is like, no. And so what Amanda Lovelace did was she just took everything good about that story, the creepiness, the anxiety. If you read the poem, it reads in a pace where it's like very, very fast, and your heart rate gets up and you're anxious, and then it slows down. And you lose all of that when she redacts everything to just Lenore. That's the whole story. The poem that she took out of everything is Lenore's The Long Lost Love. We know that. As the skeleton of the poem, we know that. I didn't need you to take out all of the good bits to tell me about Lenore. I gave it 2 stars to be generous. It should be 0 stars. Of course, I loved The Raven, the original. All right, the next 2 books that I picked up in March was Kid Authors, The Tales of Childhood from Famous Writers. This one is by David Stabler, illustrated by Doogie Horner. And then this one is Kid Innovators, True Tales of Childhood from Inventors and Trailblazers, written by Robin Stevenson and illustrated by Allison Steinfeld. Now, this is a series. There is also presidents, scientists, athletes, artists. Is there another one? I think there's another one. Anyways, they're 200 pages each. It took me about like 4 hours to read these. I read them both back to back. I found them extremely good. I gave them both 5 stars. It was a 5-star kind of month. Both of these were 5 stars. I gave these ones 5 stars. And my star ratings aren't typical like everybody else's. You know, if it's a good book, it's 5 stars because it's informative, I was entertained, I enjoyed the characters, I liked the information, stuff like that. Like, I'm pretty lenient when it comes to my star ratings because writing books are hard. And I read to escape and not to dig out and inspect and dissect a story. So if it was entertaining to me, if I liked reading it, then it's going to be a 5-star. So, Kid Innovators. I didn't know a lot of these people. So, for example, I never heard of Grace Hopper. I've never heard of Rishma Sujani. I've never heard of William Kakwamba or Hedy Lamarr or Maria Montessori or Madam C.J. Walker. I've never heard of these people. And so learning about them was so fun. So we have the table of contents, okay? And it has part 1, Tech Revolution. Part 2, Seas, Skies, and Outer Space. Part 3, Cracking Codes and Saving Lives. Part 4, Trailblazers. I got 5 minutes. I'm probably going to have to continue this later. But it's got illustrations to kind of get kids to want to read it. Now, this is set for children between 9 and 12, so between like 4th through 7th grade. And it talks about how the kids, where they were born, when they were born, how they got their ideas, what they did. Most of these children were avid readers. Most of these children were loners. They didn't have many friends, but they had big ideas and they wanted to follow through with these ideas, and the people in their lives helped them. They encouraged them to be themselves, their true, authentic selves. And so I just really enjoyed learning about their childhoods, because kids only see what adults look like at the end of their like careers, or at the beginning of their careers, but as adults, you know, they don't get to see the process of how these people got great. And I absolutely loved the process. So definitely liked both of these. I liked Kid Authors more because I enjoy learning about authors, and I've heard about all of these authors. So this one was more fun. I'm going to give this one to my 3rd grade class. I think that they'll be interested. They do Genius Hour in class, and I'm going to keep Kid Authors because I want this. I hope it would be nice if they had a Kid Authors part 2, where I could learn more about more authors when they were little. I just really enjoyed these books. And if you have kids that like biographies about famous people, and I would definitely pick these up. These are so fun. They are colorful. They have really good information. They don't sugarcoat anything. When the kids are going through trials and tribulations and they're feeling like they're inadequate and they can't make it, the book talks about that and how they overcame their obstacles. And so I really enjoyed that. So those were both 5 stars. And then the last 2 books, I got 2 minutes. The last 2 books that I read were, again, short. It's been a while since the beginning of this video. I did already film my reviews for this, but because I was crammed, I was telling you guys earlier that my memory card was running low, and so I figured I would just give it more detail. So Across the Green Grass Fields by Shannon Maguire. Now this came out in, I believe, January, possibly. Yeah, I think it came out in January, but I picked it up in February because I wanted to read it for the Buzzwordathon because the theme was color. Green is in the title, and yet I didn't pick it up until the very end of March. Now, when it comes to the Wayward Children series, I have basically given each book a 5-star rating or a 4.5 star rating because they were all deliciously perfect in their tiny little packages until we got to this one. Now, I gave this one I started off with a 5-star, and then a week later when I was writing the review, I realized this really isn't a 5-star read. I was giving it a 5-star because of nostalgia reasons, because I like this series so much, because it's from Shannon Maguire, but this is more of a 3-star read. And the reason for that is we're meeting a new character. Her name is Reagan, and everything's fine and dandy. It still follows the same protocol. We meet a little girl or a little boy, but we meet a character. I think for the most part, it's only been girls that we've seen the backgrounds to. The boy who can play the bone flute, I don't think we've heard his backstory just yet. And did his story end? I really want to go back and reread the entire series at some point. Probably before the 7th book comes out, I'll do that. But so the the protocol for these books is that a child has some kind of obstacle that they are facing. They are not happy in their life at the moment, and a door to a magical world opens up to them. And because they are little, they walk through this door. Now, the door will say, you have to be sure. It'll say, be sure somewhere, either a sign, or it's created within the door itself, or the child will see it near or around the door to be sure. But at any age, you're never quite sure of anything, even as an adult. I mean, especially if you have no concept of what's going to happen after the fact, you know? You can be sure that you want something, but you don't know what's on the other side, and so your being sure is cut short because you don't really know what will happen or what will become of you after you've made this decision. And I think that's the reason why all of these books spit out our characters at around the age of 16. I know in the Goblin Market book, I can't remember the title at this moment in time, but the girl in that book knew that at 16 she would have to be sure. She would have to decide her fate. And she chooses the Goblin Market, but her love for her family, her heart and her mind are in two different places, and so the Goblin Market again spits her back out. And so within these stories, I mean, if you're not familiar with the Wayward Children series, I will again reiterate what the whole series is about. It's about children who find these magical doors. They live in these magical worlds for a period of time, and then eventually the world spits them out at around the age of 16, when they feel like they have fulfilled what they went to that world to do. And then when the kids are spit back out, all they want is to go back to these worlds because they don't like the life that they are living in. Their family members, their parents, you know, won't accept them for who they are now. Like, they want the old child back, the little kid that they had lost. They want that child back, but they don't get that one back. They get a 16-year-old version of that child with fully different mindset and aspirations and everything. And so the parents or the family members, they feel, we don't really get much of their point of view, but as a parent, I would kind of feel gypped if like, me personally, I would love my child regardless. But I think that the parents are feeling like they missed out on the upbringing of this child. And even though they love and miss this child, they missed the idea of the child prior to their disappearance. At least that's what I get from the books themselves. So, back to this story. Reagan is a 10-year-old girl, and she has two best friends. So in kindergarten and first grade, she had two best friends. One of the best friends was like the mean girl, the leader of their group. And the other best friend was more of a tomboy. She liked bugs, and one day she brings a garden snake to school or to the friend's house or whatever, and the mean girl was like, oh, that's not girly. That's boyish. You can't be my friend anymore. You have to be girly in order to be in my friend group. And Reagan, who is in the middle, who is more of a follower than a leader, is like, well, whatever. I don't want to be the weird girl. I don't want to continue to be friends with this other girl, even though I know it's wrong to not like her because she likes snakes. I even wanted to touch this snake, is what Reagan says. But she follows along with the mean girl because she doesn't want to be outed and be a freak. And then as she's aging, and 10 years old seems very young to be starting with training bras and growing boobs and everything, but I swear the kids are getting more and more developed, younger and younger. I swear it's in the water, or maybe it's the hormones in our milk. I'm not sure. But kids are starting to develop a lot earlier. And in this book, the mean girl and, you know, her outside posse are all becoming more girly. They're growing, they're getting boobs, they're getting their periods, and Regan isn't getting any of those things. And finally she comes out to her parents and she's just like, what is wrong with me? And the parents finally sit her down and say, we've been carrying this secret around. And at this point I thought, I know what's going on. And it kind of was. They said, we've been carrying this secret around for years, waiting for the day that you asked, because we didn't want to just bombard you with this information if you didn't know what was going on. And so they said that she was born with an XY chromosome instead of an XX. And she goes, well, that means, she goes, I know Y means boy, but I'm not a boy. I don't feel like a boy. I don't have boy parts. And the parents are like, you're right. Some kids end up having different chromosomes within their bodies, but on the outsides they show something different. And the doctors, they said that, you know, because you're so 50-50 that you could go either way. So we could start hormones now for whichever way you want to go. And she goes, well, I am a girl and I want to be a girl and I don't want to be a boy and I don't care about what my chromosomes say. And the mom's like, that's fine. You're perfect the way you are. You have girly parts outside. We don't have to worry about any of those things. We'll deal with other issues as they come along as you grow. But right now, if you want to go the girl route, we can start hormones and that will kickstart your breast buds and your period and all of that stuff. But before any of that could happen, she tells the mean girl, because she thought that the mean girl would keep her secret, but the mean girl doesn't, and immediately starts screaming how she's a boy and how it's icky and she's perverted for coming to sleepovers and seeing people in bathing suits. And I'm thinking, she's 10. And this girl is a horrible person. Horrible person. I would never. I would never be friends with a girl like that. But I understand why Regan ran. And so Regan runs away. And as she's running away, like she's running through the forest on the backside of her school that leads to her house, she comes upon a door and goes through. And when she ends up on the other side, she's in Hoofland. Her favorite thing in the whole world is horses. And so she ends up in this world filled with horse people. So centaurs are the ones that find her first and bring her into their family and their clan or what have you. And that's her storyline. Now, the reason why I gave this story, this book itself, 3 stars is because the beginning was great. We got to see, you know, how Regan developed and why she wanted to leave the real world and go to this fairy world. That's typical for all of these books. And then when we got there, it was great. I liked the world. The world building wasn't as like, I was gonna say flavorful, but that's not the right term. But it wasn't elaborate as in the previous books. And then the middle happens, and then there's like a quick little like thing, like 2/3 of the way into the book, something happens that changes her course, and then the ending is so abrupt, and it's not confusing at all, but it's just, this wasn't as magical as the other 5 books because it was so abrupt. Like it felt like it should have been longer. There was too much information at the beginning and not enough information at the end. And maybe that's because we're going to be set up with more Reagan books down the line. I know with Jack and Jill, we had 3 books about them. So maybe this storyline will continue on longer. I'm not sure the process that Shannon McGuire is going through to create this series, but I love it regardless. So as a standalone, it's a 3-star, but without the, with the scheme of the whole series, it's probably like a 3.54 star because it does go through the motions of all of the other books. It's not like strange and by itself, but it wasn't as fun to read as the others. All right, and then the last book that I want to talk about is The White Darkness by David Grann. This is a nonfiction. This was our 3rd and final book in our book buddy theme of survival from February. So Ashley and I read The Fireman, we read Obsidio, and then we read White Darkness. Now, I did read Killers of the Flower Moon with Ashley a while ago. I think it was like in February or something. And or maybe it was January. Maybe it was last year. I can't quite remember. But that story really affected me, and I was very upset while I was reading it. This one, however, affected me in a different way. I cried. It's a very tiny, short book, but it does have beautiful photos of Antarctica in it. And since I read, what was it? Up to this point. So here's the main character of the nonfiction. His name is Worsley, Henry Worsley. Okay. So, Henry Worsley is a decorated military man in the UK. And since he was little, he's always been obsessed with Shackleton and his points of view on how to be a leader and what to do when you are, pretty much walking through fire. There is a quote in here, if I can find it, that sums up the story perfectly. It's I think in chapter 3 it says, for scientific leadership, give me Scott. Falcon Scott was one of the explorers that was trying to be the first one to the South Pole, like the very South Pole of Antarctica. He was the one who wanted to do that. And then it says, for swift and efficient travel, Amundsen, and he was a Swedish, Norwegian, one of those Nordic countries. He actually beat them all and he got there first. So for scientific leadership, give me Scott. For swift and efficient travel, Amundsen. But when you are in a hopeless situation, when there seems to be no way out, get on your knees and pray for Shackleton. And that's basically what happened in Up to This Point by Jennifer Longo, the YA book that I read back in December. It was about a ballerina who wanted to go to Antarctica. And she was actually a descendant of Scott, whereas he is a descendant of a person who was with Shackleton. Not Shackleton himself, but one of the people, the explorers that went with him. And so I found this so fascinating. The pictures are beautiful. They have pictures of like Shackleton's like pictures. Shackleton had a photographer that went with him, and he got some really amazing pictures. This is the Endurance, I believe. Yeah, that's the Endurance. So if you don't know anything about those 3 explorers, they were all racing to get to the South Pole. They all went in like these ships. Shackleton himself went and he was going there and realized that if he didn't turn around, he would, and his team would die. So he turned around and didn't actually make it. Scott didn't want to turn around, and so him and the other 2 men that went with him, they all perished on their way there because they didn't want to stop. They wanted to win, so they continued on until they died. Edmondson got there first and went back, and everything was fine. He took a different route. He had animals to help him get there. It wasn't about picking up things along the way for research. He wanted to get there and get back, and he did a great job with that. And so, yeah, so I mean, it talks about those 3 explorers, and then it also talks about Henry Worsley in his decorated, like his military aspirations. Like, he wanted to be a leader. He wanted to do all these things. And so he ends up taking 2 other descendants with him from back then in Shackleton. So it's like the great grandson of so-and-so and like the nephew of so-and-so. And they all go there, and they make it almost to the other side of Antarctica, like to their goal point. But because they didn't want to perish through starvation and everything, they ended up turning back. And then, so Worsley decides a couple of years later to do a charity, and so he's getting people to send him money. So he's collecting money so he can go on another excursion, this time to raise funds for the UK's veterans. So we, of course, like we have veterans here from wars and everything. Of course, the UK has that as well. And so he was, you know, raising money for veteran awareness and veteran funds and helping them out. And also, he would, you know, get to go on his excursion over the Antarctica again. And this time he succeeded and got all the way through. But the 3rd time he goes is a little bit different. He decides that this is the last time he's gonna go to Antarctica. His wife has a bad feeling about it, but she's never stepped in front of him when he had a dream that he wanted to fulfill, and so she gave him her blessings, but she really thought something bad was going to happen. And Worsley gets very, very close to his goal, and then decides to call in for, you know, for medical help, because he could tell that his body was breaking down and wasn't going to be able to function anymore. And I'll let you guys read about the rest that happens, but this man is amazing. 3 times in Antarctica, going across like 90 days where you're trekking through black, like they're called whiteouts because all you see is snow. You can't even see in front of you. Like, that would freak me out. I would imagine going in circles or falling down a crevasse, or, you know, just succumbing to hypothermia or starvation. Like, there might not be bears in Antarctica, but the monsters that live there are still as scary. And so, what a cool guy. Anyways, that is everything I wanted to share with you of the books that I've read in the month of March. So not too bad. If I'm keeping track, in January I did 8, in February I did 7, and in March I did 6, right? 2, 4, 6. Yeah, 6 books. I read 3. I read all 3 of these books in one day, so I could fill up my thing, because these 3 books I finished right before or during my vacation, and then when I came back I immediately read these 3 just so I could fill up my red TBR, because I was pretty disappointed with only my 3 books. Anyways, pretty much all 5 stars besides Across the Green Grass Fields. What a great month of reading. And I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you guys pick up some of these books. They were amazing. I absolutely love them. And yeah, hope you guys have a very good rest of your weekend. And I will talk to you soon. Thank you so much for watching.